What's a good word, y'all? It's your boy DKB here. So we're recapping day 8 and day 9 of New York Jets training camp. From an injury perspective, luckily nothing else crazy has really been going on. We have Garrett Wilson who's out. Seems like a low ankle sprain. They were pretty cautious with him, right? So I believe this is his second practice that he's missed, and they ideally believe he'll come back the end of this week, early next week from it. So nothing long term. You hate to see the missed time between him and Aaron Rodgers, especially when it seems like they've been linking up for huge plays pretty much every practice. But I think you feel confident in what you've seen already to say that there shouldn't really be a concern here. And then, of course, we had Corey Davis, who's still been out with the illness. He needs to be there as much as possible. And it's unlikely that he probably shows up in the Hall of Fame game either. So we'll just have to hope that he returns by the end of the week as well. But I did hear that he was doing some conditioning work out on the field. So at least seeing him there is a bonus, considering he completely missed, a day ago. So either way, more of some of the great things that have been happening, it's been kind of status quo for certain players during training camp, which is a great thing. So we'll kind of dive into it now. We've had Tony Adams, another interception versus Rodgers. We've been seeing him play this free safety role during camp, and he's been holding down the fort, right? At this point, you feel like it's his job to lose and not necessarily Adrian Amos's to try to gain, I would say. I thought he'd probably be penciled in as the starter with Tony Adams looking to try to steal the spot away, but Tony Adams is turning some eyes. I know there's been some players already on the roster and some former players that have kind of been commenting on him, and I want to say Damian Woody is the name that I'm thinking of, but we could see a resurrection of our safety position here with a guy like Tony Adams and finally getting strong play out of there. He's been showing all of his physical traits and his understanding of the playbook. It's just been meshing beautifully, and we're seeing him make plays all over the place. So if you could pick off Aaron Rodgers, who's statistically one of the least turnover-prone quarterbacks, even with him aging up, I think that's a huge plus for Tony Adams. Moving on to Allen Lazard, he scored another touchdown with Rodgers, so obviously his chemistry and connection with him is as strong as ever. Now, there is something Joe Blewitz was mentioning on X Factor like a month back maybe about Allen Lazard, and I think it's been creeping up during camp for sure, so we'll touch on it again, but just want to mention for what it's worth to highlight, at least we're seeing a consistent trend, but he may be a boom or bust guy. For as many big plays as he makes, you'll probably see a lot of bad plays to kind of balance things out with him. Rodgers free plays. So Aaron Rodgers is a quarterback that we've never had. I mean, you got to go back to Joe Namath, Chad Pennington, Vinny Testaverde. Those three specifically, I don't think there's too many other quarterbacks that we've had that may have had a mastery of an offense like this, right? These free plays, we've seen them in the last 2 or 3 practices now frequently enough to where you can say that Aaron Rodgers and this offense seem like they're starting to take the next step in understanding and being able to replicate the offense to the best of its ability, which is what we would have seen out of the 2 MVP years from Aaron Rodgers. And it seems small, but the ability for the offensive line and Aaron Rodgers, the wide receivers, tight ends, running backs, all of that stuff, for them to be synchronized enough for this to have been effective in 2 or 3 practices now is a huge bonus, especially since we're still testing some things out on the offensive line. We don't have I was going to say Daniel Brown. We don't have Dwayne Brown yet, still on the PUP list. We're rotating out Billy Turner and Mekhi Becton. Obviously, we have Max Mitchell kind of holding down the fort at right tackle. But you're still kind of rotating some pieces and stuff. It's not going to be as cohesive as it could be. And so, we've heard that this cadence is advanced. So I've heard it from Robert Saleh. There's been plenty of other players that mention, what it means to really play with Aaron Rodgers. And so I can't be more happy to see that, it's being utilized early and often. And it's a wrinkle in our game that we haven't seen in 20 plus years. So I'm excited to see how that gets utilized in meaningful games. Training camp has kind of been up or down. more often than not, I feel like Aaron Rodgers is going to make a defense pay. So it's a word up to us that we're seeing a lot of this happen. Tony Adams, one of his picks, were on a busted free play, that Aaron Rodgers exposed. But it's a nice back and forth, even if and it's something for our defense to get accustomed to as well, especially with the caliber of quarterbacks we have coming up this season, the Jalen Hurts, the Patrick Mahomes of the world, the Josh Allens, right? So good measuring stick both ways for us. Wes Schweitzer getting first team reps at center is pretty big. He's been relegating Joe Tippmann to the third string unit, and it's a pleasant surprise. Wes Schweitzer, guard center capability. I thought Tristan Colon was going to be the better prospect coming in, and that hasn't necessarily been the case whatsoever. And at least for what it's worth, Wes Schweitzer did sell a pass over Aaron Rodgers' head during training camp. So I don't know, maybe there's an adjustment period or something that's going to happen there, but nonetheless, worthy of being noted. We'll see if Joe Tippmann can kind of gain some ground since he's expected to play in most, if not all, of these preseason games. We'll see if maybe he can find a way to make up some ground and prove that he can move up to the second string at least and make this a legit competition between Connor McGovern and himself. Mekhi Becton, he's had back-to-back strong practices, which has been quoted by Robert Saleh and the coaching staff. So my understanding is he's going to be on a pitch count for the Hall of Fame game. And Robert Saleh's approach makes sense. I know a lot of us want him to start. We feel like he'll probably beat out Max Mitchell for the starting spot. But for a guy that hasn't played in 2 years and you can realistically slap the injury-prone label on him, it makes a ton of sense to slow pace this. As Robert Saleh put it, let him get through a full practice, let him get through a full week, let him get through a game with no kind of setbacks and stuff like that, and then you can talk about him being utilized as a starter. So Randall Cobb, he's been getting some punt return reps. He's been getting utilized a little bit more heavily, of course, with Garrett Wilson and Corey Davis being out. But as we mentioned with the offensive version of the unofficial depth chart breakdown, he's listed with the second stringers, and he's not a starting slot wide receiver on this team, which is interesting, but not necessarily the worst idea in the world. You're going to get a highly skilled slot wide receiver that's going to be fully rested at most, if not all, times when he hits the field. And we know what his chemistry with Aaron Rodgers looks like as being, I want to say, I can't remember the statistic for you guys, but in terms of having a safety net or blanket, if you will, he's been one of the best bets for Aaron Rodgers targeting a wide receiver. We've seen Jimmy Moreland with another interception touchdown. So I'm thinking if Bryce Hall truly does go, you're looking at a guy like Jimmy Moreland as maybe a potential option that is gaining this coaching staff's favor. We've seen the undrafted free agent Xavier Gibson flashing a little bit. I know he had a long catch and run play today. Israel Bandikonda, he's flashing some of that long speed. He's a guy I haven't really heard much of anything about. I thought we'd hear about him early and often breaking off some big plays. That hasn't necessarily been the case. Not necessarily a bad thing either. For all of the physical traits we love, there was definitely a lot about his game tape that definitely still needed some polishing. Deslin Alexander, not sure about the last name, but the undrafted free agent Pitt defensive lineman for us. He's been flashing for a couple practices now. He's kind of abused Mekhi Becton a little bit, and I think this was before pads, but I think he got him once when pads were on as well. But he's been picking up another sack here and there. So a guy that's capable. He seemed like a guy that could be a plug-and-play defensive lineman, obviously, on this particular team with how we built up our defensive line. That's going to be easier said than done, but he's showing some pretty nice moves very early, maybe a little bit more refined than expected, but he could be a prime practice squad candidate for us, is kind of following that Tanzel Smart kind of mode of things, even though he's probably going to be more of a guy that's considered an edge prospect for us. Jermaine Johnson, he's been seeing significant first-team reps, more so than even Carl Lawson in the last couple practices from what I read up on. And not to say that he's going to replace Carl Lawson as a starting defensive lineman, but I think they want to really see how much he's actually advanced and progressed from his rookie season. And if him seeing this many snaps is indicative of anything, I think is that, everybody pegging him as being a true breakout candidate is definitely going to pay off, and probably very early during this season for us. DJ Reed, still the man. He's locking things down out there on the corner. He's had at least 1 or 2 big pass breakups every practice recently. And it's interesting to see that he's getting it done against various people. I've seen him do it against the tight ends. We have the Tyler Conklin highlight. And obviously, against our wide receivers as well. So, maybe some improvements to his game in terms of obviously the more physically imposing prospects that we saw give him a little bit more trouble last season. Zach Wilson struggling with some accuracy in this recent practice. So again, I'm going to be tuning in to a lot of these preseason games specifically to see Zach Wilson and kind of some of the progressions that he's made in his skill set, right? Again, keep in mind, this is as much of a project as you can call a guy, even though he's heading into year 3, because we're looking to essentially completely rebuild him back from ground zero. Take his college tape, enter the new coaching staff, and consider this a full restart for him. And then Zonovan Knight, he's probably been creating the most separation in the running back room. Michael Carter, probably back to a little bit of what we've seen from his rookie year. Not quite as consistent, breaking the tackles and being evasive as what we saw. But Bam Knight, he's had some nice chunk games recently. He's been showing some pretty strong work in the red zone. And so he's a guy that maybe could be a surprising roster mate over a guy like Michael Carter and over the rookie Izzy. So we'll see how that pans out. But it's nice to have unearthed some of these gems, undrafted free agent or not. Best man is going to end up playing on a championship roster for us. And other than that, overall, I think we've been seeing a lot of guys step up that we've been hearing make some noise, all the way up from the undrafted free agents to the guys that we picked up in this particular draft. Will McDonald balling out, all of those kind of things. So we'll see how things continue. I want to say there was a green and white scrimmage that we had, so I'm not sure if that's part of the practice that I'm actually covering here, or if that's separate. I'm going to dive into it. If so, I'll definitely drop another video. But yeah, Hall of Fame game right around the corner. I'm super hyped for that. But let me know what your guys' thoughts are, and I'll catch you again. Peace.